Generally speaking, there are two branches of poetry. The first is poetry for the page. That means it's written with the primary intent that it be read rather than heard. Poetry for the page is often wrongly assumed to be overly academic, classist, and exclusionary, a minefield of rules and regulations that you should avoid entirely unless you're of the ivory tower elite, because otherwise you'll certainly mess it all up if you try. There are many who seem to have devoted their entire lives to propagating this exact sentiment, which is why I am so glad to say that they're wrong. Poetry is an art form that has been used over the years by the educated and uneducated alike. The only hard and fast rule in poetry is that whatever you're saying should be true, and that truth should be told in a telling way. Poetry for the page is generally split into two categories: structured verse and free verse. Structured verse is what you likely explored in school as a child. Generally, it comes with established and predictable rhyme structures and a number of other rules around how the poem should be formed. Metaphors, similes, and imagery are always important in any poetic endeavor, but punctuation, number of syllables per line, where you choose to end each line of text, also known as line breaks, quotes, and wordplay are all massively important tools for expression in this format. Specific structures that you might be familiar with or want to look into are sonnets, sestinas, and haiku. While each of these forms and structures comes with a laundry list of rules, we all know the rules were meant to be twisted, reinterpreted, and even broken at times, so please don't feel too limited by them. One thing you may also discover is that often limitations can inspire greater creativity and inspiration than absolute freedom. That's been my experience, at least. Aside from structured verse, there's also free verse, which, as you can probably guess, is a lot more freeform. Predictable rhyming structures, worrying about syllable count, and other limitations are all gone, if you want them to be. You're free to write as you wish and to indulge in self-imposed versions of any of the aforementioned limitations if you'd like, but you can just as quickly abandon them as well if that's what suits you. Free verse is often viewed as lazy, chaotic, and disorganized, but that's not the case. Like any other creative endeavor, it can be executed poorly or it can be executed well. It all depends on how seriously you approach the work and how willing you are to refine what you write. Some people find that starting with free verse is easier for them because the only rules are the ones they impose on themselves, whereas others take solace in the structure of an already established form. I recommend you try both and you figure out what works for you. If poetry for the page is shared, it's generally written to be read on blogs, in magazines and poetry journals, ebooks, zines, printed books of your own poetry, and anthologies, or collections of poetry from many different writers.